Well, good morning. I'm going to try that again. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you. If you're new here today, my name is Mike. I'm the pastor here at Rutledge Church. It's so good to be with you this morning. And just so you know, I don't know what your past experience of church might have been, but you are allowed to talk to me a little bit. And so if you like what I'm saying, well, even if you don't, if you say that you do, I might get better. So I just want to put that one out there. You can talk to me. If I ask you how you're doing, you're allowed to say good. Right? We're not that orderly here. And so, and especially if I make a joke, that's when you're supposed to laugh. Okay, so that helps the whole moment. Thanks, Allie. I appreciate that. If this is your first time, I do want to say a special welcome to you, especially if this is your first time maybe in church in a while, that you would give us your attention for a few moments. It's a really honor for us to be with you in that. I do hope that everyone is doing well this morning, but we know that life doesn't always go the way we plan, right? It doesn't always go in the direction we hope. Sometimes we have to walk through seasons of hardship and trial. Sometimes it's tumultuous and chaotic. Sometimes it feels like everything's going well and we're on the right page. And the beautiful thing about church is that no matter where you're coming from, no matter who you are or what you've done, we all come to the same place and receive the same invitation from Jesus, that we can be met with Him and be led to our greatest place of flourishing and hope and healing. So if you've walked in off the worst week of your life or the best week, you pick the perfect place to be. Because whether you're not okay, it's okay to be not okay. And whether you feel like you're awesome, that's awesome too. We can celebrate with you because the grace of Jesus is open for any and all. That's really what we're about being a church that leads people into a soul-changing relationship with Jesus, wherever they are, whoever they are, from wherever they might be. Because we know, as we've been saying, that one moment of encounter with Jesus can shift everything. We are just somewhat, maybe you can call us crazy enough to believe that with one encounter with the God of the universe, you can come in on a Sunday morning, go to a connect group on a Thursday night, or even a heart and soul, and really connect with God and have everything about our situations and our life shift. And so we just want to create a church that allows for that to happen. We aren't here to create another religious institution in our city, but to create a moment of encounter with the God of the universe and pray and seek and ask Him to just move in our hearts. And so no matter who you are, whether currently you believe in God or not, we're excited to have that moment this morning. And one of the ways that we help lead people to that place is through the Bible, through the Word of God. We do believe that this is not some old, ancient relic, but a relevant word from God for us today, that He's given it to us, actually for our good. Does it have some rules and some things in there? Of course it does, because we believe He is our good Father, who gives us our best yeses, but also the most holiest of no's, to direct us towards our joy and our flourishing. So we're going to open it up today and sort of read from it and allow it to challenge us and change us and convict us. And we're going to be in Luke chapter 19. And if you're unfamiliar with the Bible, Luke is a book found in what Christians call the New Testament. It's sort of like the last third of a Bible like this. It's the third book in the New Testament. It's written by a man named Luke. And he was a doctor and a historian. He tried to chronicle the life of Jesus as accurately as he could. And so we come to one of his stories today. It's one that's found in other Gospels as well. It's a significant story because it happens a week before Easter, as we actually are today. We're looking forward to next week. And so we're going to read a story about that. So we're going to be in chapter 19, starting in verse 28. But before we do that today, I want to take just a moment and have a special thank you. Because here's the thing. Church like this, when you walk in, right, it happens, it's already done, it's put together, we get to do church, but it takes an army of volunteers to make it happen. It takes a team to come early, to set up, to stay after, to tear down, to be all in here. Our kids, workers out there, slaving over our kids, make sure they are loved and served and honored and taught. So can we just give our volunteers a round of applause today? Just thank them for doing what we do. Worship team today, thank you so much for leading us in that. All right, so chapter 19 of Luke. If you don't have a Bible, it will be on the screen behind me. If you need a Bible, let us know and we will get you one, by the way. Starting in verse 28. And this is what we read today. And when he had said these things, he went on ahead, going up to Jerusalem. When he drew near to Bethpage and Bethany, at the mount that is called Olivet, he sent two of his disciples, saying, Go into the village in front of you, where on entering you will find a colt tied, on which no one has ever yet sat. Untie it and bring it here. If anyone asks you, why are you untying it? You shall say this, the Lord has need of it. And those who were went away. Sorry, I don't know what's going on in my brain right now. I can't read. I swear I passed high school. And found it just as he told them. And as they were untying the colt, its owner said to them, "Why are you untying the colt?" And they said, "The Lord has need of it." And they brought it to Jesus, and throwing their cloaks on the colt, they sat Jesus on it. And as he rode along, they spread their cloaks on the road. And as he was drawing near, already on the way down from the Mount of Olives, the whole multitude of his disciples began rejoicing and praising God with a loud voice for all the mighty works that they had seen, saying, "Blessed is the King who comes in the name of the Lord. Peace in heaven and glory in the highest." And some of the Pharisees in the crowd said to him, "Teacher, rebuke your disciples." And he answered them, saying, "I tell you, if these were silent, the very stones would cry out." Very stone. Let's pray. Jesus, thank you today for your word. Thank you that it is good to us and good for us. I pray you would speak to our hearts through it today. Thank you that you are good and that you've given this for our good, to encourage us and to challenge us and to lead us to our place of flourishing and in peace. And I pray that we'll encounter you today in this word. In your name we pray. Amen. Here's my question. Have you ever put your back up? Right? It's not a happy thing, you know what I'm saying? But like everything about life shifts after that. You can't really do the same things anymore. You can't really engage in life the same way. And I'm sort of embarrassed to tell you this story because if you're gonna tell someone that I put my back out, right? You want it to at least be for something heroic. Like if you're gonna be debilitated for a while, it should be for a good reason. I was lifting a car off a kid or something happened, right? And I was the guy and I rescued him, or my son may have been falling off the couch and I caught him. And I saved his life, and I landed weird, and so that's why my back's out. But I can't say that. One time, I put my back out it's because I was mopping. I used to be a janitor in college, and I was mopping one morning, and it was like 20 minutes into my shift, and I was bent over for the rest of the shift, having to try to mop because I couldn't stand up straight. I went home, laid on the couch. Once that happens, right, it's not even just embarrassing, especially in that nature, but it just ruins the day. It ruins your life, sort of. I'm being a little dramatic, but you can't do as much as you're supposed to do. You can't function properly, right? And so then we had to call the chiropractor, and we got there. Obviously couldn't drive myself, so my mom had to take me to the chiropractor, which again, as a college student, is somewhat, humiliating that I need my mom to come help me again. But hey, you have to do it. And we get there. And then, if you've ever been in this moment, right? As soon as the chiropractor starts moving and shifting you around and cracking your back, does anyone love the sound of bones cracking? I know it grosses people up, but I love it for some reason. It's so satisfying to hear it. It sounds like something's being fixed. I don't know if it is, but anyways, I just love it. And so you hear it, and you get all set, and then you sit up, and it's just relief fills your body. Right? And you can start doing life properly again, and it's just this great euphoric relief. Anyone know what I'm talking about? Yeah. Right? Here's the problem. Most of our souls are out of alignment. And when they're disjointed, guess what we invite? Chaos. And we want to talk today a little bit about this idea of Jesus being our King of Peace. That's the title of today. And how when our souls get misaligned, get put out, that we actually invite chaos in the world around us. And I'll give you the whole point of the sermon today. If you do not have peace in your soul, you will never have peace outside of your soul. Yeah. So we have this story today of Jesus, and he's got his guys with him, his crew, his fam, his squad, call it whatever you want. I don't know what's cool anymore. Right? And there's about 12 of them, and they're headed towards Jerusalem for a reason. Jesus has to go there and die. And so Jesus sends out two of his guys and says, "Hey, go look for this donkey and just take it." I don't know about you, but at this point, I'd be like, "Jesus, I do believe in you, but I don't want to get caught stealing." Right? I don't want to be committing grand theft donkey in this moment. I'm a little uncomfortable with that. He's like, "Guys, it's all good, it's all good. Just tell the people that the Lord needs it." And so they go off and they start looking for this thing, which tells us at least two things. That one, either this is a prearranged moment, and Jesus has a donkey guy. Right? Some people have their car guy and their plumbing guy, and maybe they have some other shady guys, but they have their guys. And Jesus had a donkey guy, right, or something like that. Or the owners happened to be believers in him, and so it was okay, or they recognize. All we know is that something was prearranged and set up. Because they go and they find this donkey, and they take it. But it's interesting here because in this little moment, this is the first time Jesus self-references as the Lord. It's the first time he calls himself the King of the universe, God of heaven and earth. And the interesting thing about this is a moment where he's about to enter into the place of his death and chooses here as a place where he says, I'm in full control. That he is the Alpha and the Omega. He is the one in the driver's seat of this moment. And he says, I am the Lord, and I'm going to die. No one takes my life. I give it. That this is out of love for us, that I am the Lord in this moment, and I'm going to orchestrate this plan to get me to the place of my own death. Two things come to my mind. Number one is who do you say God is? Or Jesus is, I should say. Because he says he's the Lord. He's God of heaven and earth. That only leaves us two options. Either he's telling the truth, and we need to worship and revere him, or he's not, and we should run from him. But Jesus never lets us have this neutral, I sort of like him kind of opinion when we take him seriously. Who do you actually say he is? And number two was this idea of what's the donkey in your life that God's asking for? Because the Lord needs it. Maybe it's not an actual donkey. I don't know, maybe you live on a farm. It could be, right? But here's the thing. Is there time, some talent, some treasure, some resource, some energy, a business that you have? The Lord is standing there saying, I'm in need of that. I want to use that. I want to work through that. And we're holding it back. Is there a donkey in your life? That wasn't meant to be that funny, Ali, but I appreciate the moment, right? And so the disciples go and they find it. They walk in, they find it. And Luke says something interesting here. Just as he had said. See, here's something powerful, I think. And this is where we often get off the rails. That if Jesus speaks a word, we can bet it's a good one. See, we will often hear the words of Jesus. We have this book, right, full of promises, full of offers of joy and flourishing and peace and wholeness. But we don't believe that we will find it just as he says often. That we do it in our own way, in our own thoughts, in our own strength, that's where we'll find all those things he offers. We have this somewhat of a doubting, disbelieving heart that says, you know what, God, I know you've said this, but I don't know if I'll actually find it the way you promised. But we have to understand that his words are always rooted in his character. And if his character is holy and faithful and good and perfect and righteous and loving and for us, then so are his words. That when he speaks about our marriages, when he speaks about our money, our ideas about life and work in the future, our sexuality, our understanding of philosophy, our understanding of politics, all these different things, he has lots to say, by the way. The question is, will we trust his words? Will we trust we will find it just as he says, the way he says some things and talks about some things, at the end of that we will find the joy. Because here's the reality, whether we like it or not. If he is the Lord, then we will find it just as he said, either in the fruit and the blessing of our obedience or in the pain of not. We will find his words to be true because if he is God, they will be. So I want to be a person who steps on this side of it and says, okay, well, I'm just going to walk in trust. I'm sure those disciples at some level had this moment of I really hope there's a donkey there. I don't want to go on some wild donkey chase and have nothing there and walk around these towns and have nothing to be found. But they realized that Jesus said it. It's going to happen. The same is true for your life. Has he spoken to you? Have you gotten to his word? Has he said some things and you're just doubting whether you'll find it just as he said? If you're here today in the middle of a situation, right? I know it sounds cliche to say from the stage that he works all things for our good, but that's what he said. Will we trust him that we will find it just as he said? And they bring the donkey back, and this is where things get a little crazy, because they put him on top of it, and they start riding towards Jerusalem, and then all these people, right, at the beginning it was just his disciples, and by the end of what we were reading, it was the crowd. All these people start surrounding him, throwing down these coats and these cloaks on the ground, so that the donkey he's riding upon doesn't have to walk on the dust and the dirt. And other accounts, in Matthew's account and stuff, people start taking palm branches and start ripping them off the trees and throwing them down and waving them in the air. That's why this Sunday is called Palm Sunday. And they're walking Jesus down towards Jerusalem. So he's riding on the back of this donkey on their coats. And this is a weird moment, right? Because you and I, our first impulse, isn't to throw our coats down when like our MP walks in the room. Right? Like we don't like roll out the red carpet for our political leaders. But there's something going on here. Right? Because this is a living message This is some kind of declaration that's happening right before our eyes. And it harkens back actually to some ancient Israelite principles that when a king would come, this is what they would do. And so what is happening here is these people are saying, our king has returned. Our king is coming. King Jesus is here. The Savior, the Messiah, has arrived. He is the King that we've been waiting for and trusting in. And then Luke says they all start praising. They all start worshiping. They all start having this spontaneous church service in the middle of this back road country headed towards Jerusalem. And then all the religious people show up and try to tell them all to be quiet. Isn't it funny how when the religious people get in the room, they're like, we got to stop praising. That's a little bit too wild, right? We can't worship Jesus like that. But Jesus looks at them and says, hey guys, if these people don't praise me like this, the rocks themselves will cry out. If humans won't lift up their voice, the stuff of creation would start to. This is crazy thought. Can we be real? Like I hope as a Christian that this never happens, because that we would be people who are praising Him and worshiping Him. But it would also be quite the sight. Just imagine, right, like walking around and seeing this choir of rocks, right? Although it would be quite offensive if a rock had a better singing voice than I did. But that's what I pray about. Wish that God had blessed me with that. So that would cut real deep. That this rock, this ugly boulder, right, can sing better than the man who's asking for it. But here's the thing. There's a simple yet powerful principle that we're seeing here today that affects no matter who you are in the room. And it's simply this, that the proper response to the King is always praise. You could go so far to say it like this, that if God is God, if He is holy, the highest thing in all of the universe, then there's a moral duty for us to give Him the honor due Him. And when we withhold that, we don't only just sort of reject God, we sin greatly against His character. That the proper response to meeting the King is to elicit praise in our souls, thanksgiving. Because what we understand is that the end of our joy is the expression of our praise. That if you have found Him to be good and you know who He is, it will be inevitable that your heart will rejoice in Him. That there's something connected here that not only does God deserve our praise, when we actually know Him, it's impossible not to praise Him, not to lift up our voice, not to get loud and a little undignified, because He has rescued my soul. He has saved me from something grave and dangerous. He has given me freedom. He has rescued me from guilt and shame. He's lifted my head. He's given me His Son. He's done all these amazing things. When I get to know the goodness of God, how can I not praise? And for some of us in the room today, you have to understand that we by nature are worshiping beings. We will always worship something. The question really is not if you praise, it's what do you praise. Most often it's ourselves. I will function, I will live life, I'll be all about me. My focus is me, my attention is me, my wants and my needs and my desires, my ultimate selfishness. And for us as Christians, our shift is this, that we will praise, but we will shift it away from myself and onto the King of Glory as He comes in. And I want you to understand today that the proper understanding of an encounter with Jesus will always lead us to joy. So if you haven't got joy as a Christian, you need to re-encounter Jesus. Take some time to get to know this King again, because He has come. And I would go so far to say it like this, that when we have a moment of collective worship like this, it should always be part of our expression to have this kind of rapturous praise when our King comes. Because He's good. So not only does He deserve our praise, His goodness elicits our praise. And the question is today, are you robbing Him of what He deserves? Are you robbing Him of what He deserves? Do you give Him thanks and honor and praise and glory and affection due Him? Or do you just direct it all towards me? Look how great I am. Look how strong and wise I am. Because either way, you're worshiping. The question is what? But then we see something else interesting in this moment. Right? Because we have to put this story in the context of its larger story. And this is a week before Easter, as we said. He's turned his attention toward Jerusalem. He's heading in that direction. And all of a sudden we see at the end of the story this big crowd gathered around Him, worshiping Him, praising Him. Interestingly enough, and 7 days from now, there will be some of those people in the crowd that cries out, "Crucify Him." See, what we begin to understand is that Jesus, He's got a lot of fans, but not so much followers. See, we have to understand something about this ancient people, is they are no different than us. They had an expectation of who the Messiah was going to be. They had an expectation of Jesus. That He was going to come and be this sort of political leader, this warrior king, to come in, to ride into Jerusalem, to overthrow the Roman government, to take out oppression and restore the nation back to a form of glory, of wealth and prosperity. That when He rode in, some of them were thinking, victory is here, my oppression's about to end, my poverty is about to cease, things are going to get better for me now, the Romans will be kicked out, it's going to be a great and mighty day of war, of rebellion, and God is going to triumph through our warrior king. They didn't expect a suffering servant. And it's interesting to me that when it seems convenient, and when it seems quite easy, when the crowd is in here, when everyone's cheering for Team Jesus, there's a crowd of them who are willing to do so. But the moment they discover that the expectation they had of Jesus was not the one He was willing to fulfill, they run. That when they begin to understand that Jesus was not what they told them He needed to be, but He began to tell them who He actually is. That He is not just some spiritual genie, but God in the flesh. He is just not their convenient safety net, but God of heaven and earth. All of a sudden, things don't line up. All of a sudden, I don't know if I believe that much anymore. When it's easy, Team Jesus. When my friends start rejecting me a little bit for my belief. When my professor thinks maybe I'm not as reliable in my mind anymore. When my family doesn't understand. When my lusts are just too great. When my prosperity that I was promised doesn't show up. Well, now I don't know if I believe all this stuff. Now I'm just sort of out. And we see that there is a bunch of people in this story, and I believe even in the modern world, that are fans of Jesus, but not actually followers. I like all the love stuff and the peace, and that's awesome. I love talking about all that stuff. But when rubber meets the road, when it becomes costly to me, when I expect that this will cost me nothing, and King Jesus starts asking for everything, now I can't know if I follow it. I don't know if I believe this stuff anymore. My expectations weren't met. How many of us live as fans when we are called to live as followers? And I believe that Jesus here today wants to speak to at least one person in the room telling you to get off the fans. Because fans are actually in a worse place than enemies. Because at least enemies know they don't like Him. Fans think that they're close. And if we take Jesus' word seriously in Revelation chapter 3, it's the fans He spits out. So today there's a call from King Jesus that says, hey, I want you to follow me. I want you to know me. But don't just be a fan of me. Don't stay at arm's length. Jump 2 feet into this thing called following me. And you will find joy. Because this is what we have to understand. That on the other side of realizing that Jesus is not my genie, but that God is joy forevermore. That's the invitation. That's the offer. The question then becomes, if you don't have the joy you hope, it's probably because you don't know the King Jesus that actually exists. Are you a fan? Or are you a follower? A fan or a follower? And today I want to sort of begin honing in on what this message really is all about today. In these last few moments that we have together. And it's this. What did Jesus actually do in this moment? Literally, He rode in to Jerusalem on the back of a donkey. Which, if we're going to be honest, is a little bit of a weird display. Right? Like when you think of king, when you think of regal, of brilliant, of astounding, I'm pretty sure a donkey doesn't come to mind. Can we be real? Right? Like I don't think that animal goes with that kind of idea. But there's something happening here that we need to see. Because this is Jesus riding into Jerusalem, saying, I am the King returning. I am the King coming. I am the King you've been waiting for. But here's the key thing. That He's saying, I'm the King in a time of peace, not a time of war. See, because there's this old prophecy from the book of Zechariah, chapter 9, where he's looking forward to this King that God promised He would come, and what He would be like. And Jesus in this moment is fulfilling it. And this is what Zechariah says. I'm going to read it for you today. He says, Behold, your King is coming to you. Righteous and having salvation is He. That He is the one who saves. He is our hope. He is righteous or just and good and upright and perfect. That's who He is. But He continues. And He's humble, mounted on a donkey, on the colt, on the foal of a donkey. And God says, I will cut off the chariot from Ephraim, and the war horse from Jerusalem, and the battle bow shall be cut off. That when the king comes, the instruments of war get destroyed. That when the king comes, the tools of conflict get destroyed. And then He says this, and He will speak peace to the nations, and His rule shall be from sea to sea, from the river to the ends of the earth. He says to us today that when the king comes in, chaos ceases. When the king enters this moment, conflict begins to subside. And this dominion of peace is meant to have no end, no stop, no borders, and all things for all people and all times. He will speak peace to everybody. He says, behold, your king comes, but not in the time of war, but as a king who rides in on peace. And this is significant for us today because we have to understand that a king would only ride on a donkey like this when there was no need for the war horse. When he didn't have to be all worried about the warring nations. When there was an established time of peace, this is when he could ride in on a donkey. This is Jesus saying, I am the king. I have come. But there is no need for fear. No need to doubt. Peace has come with me. Put your weapons down. Put it down. See, what we get to learn here today is this, that peace is not in this life necessarily the absence of chaos, but the presence of Jesus. That peace is connected to allowing the king to enter my situation. That when the presence of our king walks in, that's when things begin to get fixed. That's when chaos begins to cease. That's when conflict begins to have a resolution. When the king of peace walks in, he's saying, I am this king, I have come, and my kingdom, my dominion is that of peace. Now we have to understand what this means though, because it's deeper than just this kind of modern day tranquil, spa retreat, essential oils bubbling up and, just cinnamon flavored things happening and just calmness. That's not what this is. It's deeper than that. Right? This connects back to this ancient Hebrew word shalom. Maybe you've heard about it. It's this word that means holistic redemption. That everything is put back right. That all that is broken becomes restored. That all that's misaligned and disjointed is straightened again, is realigned, is put back. Every area of my life is put back the way it was meant to be. Every area of society and creation itself. It's a cosmic scope of God redeeming and reconciling and restoring and putting it back. And when we understand this, what we can say is a very simple but powerful thing. That the aim of King Jesus is your shalom. Is your peace. So here's the question. Do you have that? Do you have evidences of shalom in your life? When you look at yourself, do you see peace that is coming? Because this is the King that we serve. He is the King of peace. He is the King of redemption, the King of restoration, the King of reconciliation. He is the King who upholds justice. He is the King who calls us to be about it. He is the King who walks and says, I'm your shelter. I calm the storm. I'm the voice that causes all fear to cease. This is who I am. Do you have my peace? Like when you think about yourself just for a moment, is your soul, that the inner world, whether you believe you have a soul or not, we do believe in the soul as Christians, by the way, but say you're not someone who's even a Christian today. Right? In the inner world, in the inner man, right? Do you have an active yet rested confidence? Or is it anxious, frenetic, fearful, pridefully secure, which is really insecurity, self-pityingly insecure, greedy, selfish, angry, quick-tempered? Are you worried? And in your relationships, are they defined more by drama and conflict, or by health and maturation? Parents, is your home that you are building, is it a place where your kids run to as a haven, or a place they dread to set foot in? Is there evidences of His shalom in your life? Is there evidences of His peace in your soul? Do you walk with a rested confidence and a peace that is almost illogical in any moment? Because if it's true that peace is not simply the absence of outer conflict, but the presence of Jesus, then that means I can walk into any situation knowing He is here. He has silenced my soul, and it doesn't really matter what's going on out here. I can rest in peace no matter what. Do you have a peace that's unshaken by circumstance? You're here today. I want to speak to you just for a moment. If you feel like you are in a season of turmoil, a season that is defined by chaos and conflict and feels tumultuous and almost just like you're in the middle of a storm that's never ceasing, I want you to know that this King of Peace is waiting to walk in. The question will be this, is will you invite Him? Because He is this King of Peace who can walk into any situation and silence the storms that rage. He is the King, right, that spoke to waves and caused them to cease. He is the King who walks with us through the valley of the shadow of death, so we fear nothing. He is the King who looks at chaos and makes it orderly again. He is the King who reconciles all things. And if you're here today in the midst of a chaotic moment, you need to run to King Jesus, because He will bring peace. That's His promise. That's who He is. The question is, will you let Him? In your marriage today, are you inviting King Jesus to set aside all the chaos? In your family, in your dynamics at home, in your inner mind, are you inviting King Jesus to come and bring peace? Because the presence of Jesus is the beginning of peace. But you know, if He is a King of Peace, who set up a kingdom of peace, and we are part of that kingdom, that also means you are called to be a peace bringer. You are called to be an agent of shalom. So in our city, is there an evidence that Christians live here? Is there justice being had? Are we people who are working to be a voice for those who have no voice? Are we being people who take seriously the call of the justice of God to work and see the vulnerable and the marginalized loved, served, and honored? Because we are called to be peace bringers. And by the way, peace bringers is not some passive activity, but it's an active fight for justice. That we work from this place of knowing Jesus is the one who reconciles, and Jesus is the one who redeems, and I have the job to bring that peace into the chaos. That as a Christian, part of my calling, right, is to be the ones who run towards the messes, not away from them. That I enter the darkest spots to bring the light of life into those moments. That I choose to be around chaos because I bring the peace of heaven with me. That I actually put myself in places where it's a little bit conflict-ridden so that I can be the presence of Jesus there. Are you being a peace bringer in our city, in your neighborhood? Are you entering into messy relationships that bring reconciliation to it? Because we are called to be like our King. Do we do that today? You know what? I want to end with this thought. And actually, Ben, you guys can come back up. I want to shift our attention here, because here's, I think, the thing we need to understand. It's what I started with, and I want to bring it back here to this point. Is that what I've found, what I've known to be true, is that we will not have peace in our outer world until our inner world's at peace. That if you want peace in your marriage, if you want peace in your relationships, if you want peace in your workplace, but don't have peace in your soul, you're asking for something that's not going to come. Why? Why? Because here's the thing. Chaos leaks. That the condition of my inner man begins to set the condition of my relationships. That if I'm someone who is still fighting for this chaos in me, it's going to be really hard for me then to go and fight for the chaos around me. See, this is sort of the whole point of what Jesus is doing here today. I don't know if you saw this, because He is the King of peace. He says, I'm coming. I'm riding on this donkey towards Jerusalem. But I'm riding towards my death, that the foundation of my kingdom is me on the cross. That He brings peace by way of a cross and a grave, not by way of some regal victory. That for us to understand that what He bought for us on Calvary is the first step in finding peace in my soul. That there's something going on there. Because what we begin to understand is this, that when we broke, when our souls got disaligned with God, when we invited the chaos of sin to ruin what we were doing, that is when everything began to fall down. Back in the garden, right, when Adam and Eve chose to rebel, that moment is when creation broke down, when relationships broke down. That's when blame shifting happened in a marriage and they started fighting against each other, not for each other. And the same is true for us today, that we remain disjointed and misaligned and our souls in chaos. We will continue to perpetuate that pattern because our natural inclination is not towards peace but conflict. We are walking messes. Can we just be real? Right? We are selfish people. And that selfishness is the chaos of my sin. But Jesus, here's the gospel. Here's what we proclaim as Christians. But God, who could have left us alone in our chaotic mess, chose not to. Out of love for us, walked into our mess, became the peace in the storm, went to a cross and died in my place, took all that separated me from my Father on His back, nailed it to a tree, killed it in a grave, and left it there. So now I am invited by faith to know how to get my soul back aligned. That when I understand who Jesus is and what He has done for me, how I can understand that I didn't deserve this. I couldn't earn this love. I don't have to strive any longer. I don't have to work it up. I don't have to try to prove myself and be self-righteous and judgmental, because I understand that you and I need the same grace. I'm no better than you. I'm no more privileged than you. God's grace is just as good for anyone who would come. And this becomes my story. And that begins to free me from my need to be the center of my own attention and robs me of needing to perpetuate conflict and chaos. So here's the thing that we need to understand today. That the moment our souls get realigned with God is the moment life actually begins to function again. When we are made properly human again. Because we weren't made to be separated from God. We weren't made to live in chaos and conflict. But we invited with sin, so when God takes care of that, I'm actually beginning to be freed to walk in the peace of heaven. Here's what I've come to know. Here's what I have discovered. That the moment I truly believe that God could have left me, would have been just in doing it. I deserved His justice. The evil, the chaos that I perpetuate deserves the justice of God. And yet I stand here today in His grace, calling Him Father, not because I was wonderful, but because He is. That begins to explode out of me the pride and the selfishness and the greed and the me-centered life that causes the chaos. It begins to run it away from my heart. And I'm not someone who has to live in some deep-seated insecurity, some striving to prove myself, to make sure that I'm the better spouse because I need to show that I'm wonderful and righteous. I am freed from all the things that begin to leak out, and I'm invited to know what peace actually is. So the question today is this: if you need peace in the inside, that's where we begin, not from the outside. You don't fix up the house and make it all look good and put together a nice Facebook profile and Instagram thing to show that I'm doing wonderful until you actually fix what's going on here. Because listen to me, in a world that allows you to be fake, you'll never have peace. Yep. Never. Because I can pretend to be wonderful. Right? I can really put on a good show on Instagram. I got some cute kids. Right? I can just show them off all the time. But there's nothing for me. Here's the thing I want to challenge us here today. That when we understand what the grace of Jesus is, when we are invited to know that my guilt is gone. My shame has been robbed. My sins are forgiven. I'm not making up for those anymore. That's the place freedom sets in. And that's where peace becomes my disposition. I need to be real with us today. Left to your own devices, you are chaotic. Left to our own self, you lean towards destruction and conflict, because we're selfish. You're not special. You're not a snowflake. You're not a unique individual. We are all broken people in need of the grace of a Savior. And when that happens, we get free. Every other religion, every other idea, every other philosophy will look you in the face and say, if you just try harder, if you put all the pieces together, you take some spiritual retreats and put some nice music on in the background, then you'll figure it out, then you'll try. But guess what? If peace is always dependent on my activity, I will always be on the edge of losing it. But if I can rest my peace in the activity of a never-ending, never-stopping, never-fading, always present love of my Savior who died on the cross and rose up out of the grave and lives forever in heaven, emptying a tomb, and that will never shift, then my peace does not shift. Which means my marriage, hear me, becomes not the place of my conflict, but the place of my partnership. Because we're on the same team, pursuing the same Jesus. I'm not proving myself to my wife. And she's not proving herself to me. We both lead each other to grace again. That my job is the place where I find my significance is in Jesus. So I'm not trying to be the best one and undercut everyone else and trying to get all the shortcuts to make it happen. My relationships aren't about fulfilling my needs and making everyone demand what I need. The place of my service. And my city is not there to serve me, but me to serve it. If you want peace today, hear me, you have to have the peace of Jesus. See, this is the final thing I will say, is the offense of the gospel. That Jesus legitimately speaks to us today and says this: you will not have peace ever if you don't have me. Take it or leave it. That's the offer.